Okay, good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Board of Education. This is a workshop meeting, not a regular business meeting. But before we begin, just would like to remind everyone of the emergency exits. If you take time to notice where they are now, in the event of an emergency, please leave in an orderly fashion through these exits. Also a reminder that South Country School District is a smoke-free school district. There's no smoking anywhere in the building or on the school grounds. Thank you very much. So we have an abbreviated agenda tonight, and we will begin with the superintendent's report.
Yes, I have one comment, thank you. Not too long ago, we made some errors in calculating our class rank for this year's top 10 seniors. This included problems identified in our student management system dating for as far back as the 2014-15 school year, as well as first semester courses in progress not being included in the final GPA calculations. Once learned, these errors caused the district to place a hold on the final identification of the top 10 students until all aspects of the ranking process had been fully examined for accuracy. That review process was completed last week, and our top 10 students in the class of 2019 were notified of their status. Students were met with individually, and their families were presented with an updated copy of their transcript, class rank, and a hand-calculated spreadsheet reflecting the course and grades used in calculating their final GPA and rank, along with a letter of explanation. We certainly apologize for the circumstances surrounding the situation. We are addressing the errors made and putting safeguards in place to eliminate any future reoccurrence. That is all the comments that I have.
Mr. Pacino.
Question on that. Has the new top 10 list been published
Yes, it
and
has.
pushed out publicly?
Yes, it has.
In the same manner it was the first time around?
I believe so, other than recognition by the board.
Okay.
Any other comments of the superintendent's report? Okay. Trustees report. Dr. Griffin.
Thank you, Dr. Gianni, for addressing that. Appreciate that.
I'm sorry, I have it in letter form, and it's going to be on the website too, because I believe the board had
Thank you.
asked me about
Appreciate that, because I mean, things do happen, and I think we do well to make sure that we're clear about what happened, so there's no miscommunication about what happened. So thank you very much for that. But other than that, I have no comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Santa?
Well, yes, certainly would agree, and nice that we are invited to Belport's Finest, which is on Wednesday, April 17th. I'm going to try to see if I can rearrange my schedule to attend that, but that's a short week, so it's going to be a little difficult. But I would offer my congratulations to Tyler Brock, Anigua Muji, and Grace Arman, our very fine students. And it was a difficult situation, but we had to address it, and hopefully that we'll learn from our mistakes and we're going to move on from there. Other issues, I have kind of my spring cleaning list here, as I've been looking through some of my old notes and some things that still need to be addressed. I know Dr. Gianni and I had some discussions, and it was I was under the belief that a couple of our committees were going to be looking at the lighting situation at the high school, which is still inadequate. I think it's a health and safety issue in the parking lot. Front parking lot, we talked about that one spot where it's actually even dangerous for the security guards in the winter mornings when it's dark and they're standing there, you can't see them. Also, the situation with the way in which the parking lot is striped. There is absolutely no place for a parent to park if they have to come to the high school. We've had this conversation. I thought that was going to facilities, and it's not been addressed. And quite frankly, my daughter's graduating in a couple of months. So I'm still going to talk about it because I think other parents who need to come to the school building for meetings want to have a place to park. There's no real visitor parking. And depending on the time of day and whether they're buses or not buses, and honestly, depending on which security guard is there, you can be parking in a place and you need to get to a CSE meeting or a 504 meeting or a meeting with an assistant principal, or you might need to drop off necessary medication to the nurse's office, and you might need to have a 10-minute conversation with a security guard who's trying to do the due diligence, but you have no place to park. So it's a bit of a catch-22. And I'm hoping that will address that. It's yet to be done. A third issue in regards to parking is that often when you attend evening events at the high school, it can be very difficult to park in the back parking lot. I do believe we ought to be able to have some parking in the front parking lot, so that if we would stripe that in an appropriate manner, people would know where they can park, where they can't park, and we can maximize the parking so that people are not parked in the fire zone, which I obviously would not condone. So if we might be able to finally look at this. I do know that the back parking lot was actually designed by some of our students in Mr. Budge's class a couple of years ago, and perhaps we might ask some of our finest to take a look at the front parking, because they also utilize it, and they might have a new perspective on that could make it more user-friendly, because if we call parents to meetings at the high school, it ought not to be this whole big to-do about where can I park, how can I park, am I blocking buses, am I not blocking buses? So if we could adjust that, I would really finally appreciate that.
Can I?
Yes. Please, because I know.
So the lighting,
Yeah.
the lighting piece in the parking lot, we have plans underway to improve that.
Is there a timeline on that?
No,
'Cause
there's no timeline on that.
could we
But
set a
there are-
timeline? 'Cause
there's-
it's been a
it-
while
it-
now.
It involves shared service with the town,
Mhm.
so we don't have a timeline. Parking lot striping matter, I believe we have a report. It wasn't looked at by Health and Safety last school year. I'll try and dig that up and
Well,
provide it
I
as
know
well.
there was a report, but nothing's been done. So right now, if I'm a parent and I need to drop stuff off, it's kind of hit or miss whether there's a place I should or shouldn't park. So there, visitor parking ought to be available. If we're going to talk about.
I think we agree that there's need for improvement, and the superintendent is going to tell you what those plans are.
Okay, I have to dig up the report. I don't recall what the report says. I mean, but I do know what was done, and I know it was published.
Yeah, but
I don't know if
what's
it addresses the
action?
parking lot in the front. Well, I'll assure you that if it was in the report for action, it was done.
Yeah, but well, I'm saying that nothing's been done in the front of the building. That's what I'm talking about.
Why don't I get you the report? I'll give it to the entire board, and then we'll take a look at it. Because I do know we looked at the issue, and I do know a report was written.
No, it's actually not satisfactory, because there is an issue, and I'm not understanding why there's still no visitor parking.
Well, there's nothing we can do about it right now,
Oh,
other than get the information, and you raised it again, so it's on the radar.
Is it possible the report determined that it wasn't?
I honestly, I don't recall what the
Yeah,
report said.
okay.
Well, I think we talked about structurally, it was too expensive to change things, but I think we could at very least paint some lines and make it a little bit more user-friendly and market visitor parking. So I'm hoping that we'll look at the report again and maybe hopefully take some action, because there's still a problem. All right. Other issues that I'm looking for follow-up on, and maybe this was a miscommunication. We are in the process of preschool registration. I heard that there was some information posted on the bus. I think that's great. Will we be receiving any information about what the rest of the plan is to increase our preschool registration? Because our numbers have been going down.
Our parent liaisons have been posting things to the community, meeting with clergy, and distributing the information throughout. We put a sign up at South Haven, and as you just mentioned, we also put a sign on the mobile library in an
I only
effort
found that
to,
out by accident, but it was a great idea.
in an effort to move it around the community. The bus was actually parked at Stop and Shop, I think, overnight.
Wonderful.
And we've been moving it around to address that.
Appreciate that, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
And in reference to that, I do understand the numbers that we have. I know that they're on the beds forms. What I was actually asking for when I made the request is there's a certain minimum number that we have to meet in order to qualify for the grant that we've had.
157?
Yes.
That's the cutoff? So we are then not going to meet that.
Yeah, we don't, we're not at 157.
All right, Do we have then a dollars and cents of how that's going to
No,
negatively
not at
impact
this
us?
time. Not at this time.
Sorry. Okay. That will be it for now.
Okay. Mr. Pacino?
On that note, are we typically at the minimum number needed at this point? Or is it typically, or is it early
We usually
right
do
now?
make
We
MOE.
make it, yeah,
We
that's
usually-
why.
I mean, I know we make it, but I'm saying, but do we make it, is it, when do we know that we, I mean,
Well,
do
you
we?
generally know, within the first few weeks of school starting, these kids are in school, because we,
Yeah, the bench forms go out in October.
transition.
Sure, okay. No, that's all I had, just a follow-up.
No, the numbers for pre-K are low this year, there's no doubt about that.
Well, I guess what I was getting at with the question was like, do we get to a point where if it's below what makes us eligible for the grant?
No, the grant will be adjusted
It's
based on
we'll
the
get
numbers.
less
Just- oh, I
money.
see, I
That's
get
the
you.
problem, we'll be getting less money.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
You're
All
welcome.
right. Mr. Nick? Vice President Nick?
No comments.
Okay. And I just have one comment that I was able to attend Teachers College at Brookhaven Elementary School last Friday. You didn't know that?
No, I probably heard it, but
It was very, very well done, and after the wonderful presentation we received at the Board of Education meeting last week, and learning that they were going to be there, I was able to go for the opening session, and I'm glad I was there. Speaking of parking lot issues, the issue that Dr. Raymond, Principal Dr. Raymond brought up about the Brookhaven Elementary School parking dilemma with respect to buses, and the conflict with large buses and small buses, she did indicate at the last Health and Safety Committee meeting that the small buses were forced to go in the exit to avoid conflict with the large buses and asked for a redesign as well. I got to the school that day exactly at that time, and I was able to observe it myself. So I followed the school bus in the exit to see exactly what was experienced. And she's absolutely right. So I do trust that the committee and the administration is going to look into that matter, and over the summer get something done that would alleviate the safety concerns at Brookhaven Elementary. Okay. And that's all I have. Bless you. Okay. All right. So that brings us up to the two items for discussion with respect to our budget.
Yes, so the first item for discussion will be the tax levy limit review. Last week, the board asked us, administration, to provide that as well. We have an abbreviated version this evening that Dr. Burgess is going to present. The board also requested administration to prepare something for the website that speaks to the tax levy limit. That document is in there as well. We'd like some guidance prior to doing that, and certainly, I think, prior to this presentation.
Okay. Prior to the presentation or after?
I'm sorry. Thank
You
you.
know what you meant.
After.
I'm like, okay, after.
Gotcha. I speak Czech.
I didn't miss the class.
Please, Dr. Burgess.
Thank you very much once again. Good evening. So this is a brief review of the tax levy limit review, which was the second presentation that we had during our budget process to go over what is our tax levy limit, what is the maximum amount we can levy for the 2019-20 school year. So some fast facts about the tax levy limit, and I think the best way to categorize or identify it is when 2% isn't equal to 2%. And that's really one of the issues that came out about 8 years ago when the tax levy limit was introduced. So some quick facts. The 2% cap, tax cap is not an actual limit that is just 2%. It does mean that any increase above a certain amount requires 60% of voter approval, and that certain amount is a calculation. It's an 8-step calculation. The tax levy limit will vary by school district. And as I said, it's an 8-step formula that includes several factors and exemptions that may be present. The rate of inflation, or 2%, whatever is lower, is just one component of the tax levy limit calculation, which is where that 2% tax cap comes from. So the CPI, or 2%, whichever is lower, is the genesis, the origin of this 2% notion. After a school district calculates its tax levy limit, it then adds what I mentioned, the exclusions into the amount for capital work. If there's a TRS exclusion. These exclusions allow the district to propose a levy that's greater than the amount set by the limit without requiring 60% of the voters to pass the budget. So it's either that number that's established or lower, that is a simple majority. Anything that breaks or exceeds that established calculated number requires what's known as a supermajority, or 60% of the voters to pass the budget. What's the difference between the tax levy and the tax rate? Very simply, the tax levy is the additional monies needed, the monies raised to fund a portion of the voter-approved budget after all of the accounting of other revenue sources, miscellaneous, state aid, reserves, etc. A district's tax rate is the calculation, the number used to assess the taxes needed over the entire community. The tax rate's affected by the assessed valuation, how much are all the properties worth in a town, a village, or an area, and the base allocations, which is the ratio between residential and commercial properties. Those variables give what the change in the tax rate is, and that is usually different from the change in the tax levy. Again, one is how much money do you need to fund the budget, the other is what is the proportion, what is the number used to assess taxes needed for the whole community. Tax levies for projected spending and the miscellaneous, the other sources I mentioned, state aid, appropriated fund balance, reserves, other revenues, that's your tax levy. And the individual dollar rate per hundred of assessed value of a given property is used to calculate a tax bill, and that is usually provided, in our case, by the town of Brookhaven. Clarifications and misconceptions. Although commonly referred to as the 2% tax cap, the allowable levy limit may be higher for districts due to allowable exclusions. The law does not cap a property owner's actual tax bill. It only applies to the total school tax levy and not the assessed value or the tax rate. How much money can we raise? That is what is governed by the quote-unquote tax levy limit. Going over the 8-step calculation, we take last year's levy, we apply the tax-based growth factor, which is a number provided by the Office of Real Property Tax Services in Albany, New York. Payments in lieu of taxes, those are commercial properties that pay a lump sum amount instead of being on the tax roll. We subtract any court-ordered judgments. We subtract any local capital costs of the prior year, and then we multiply by the allowable levy growth factor, which, as I said, is either the consumer price index or 2%, whatever is lower. Then we take our estimated pilots for the coming year, any carryover, that's money that we didn't use or tax in the prior year, and that gives us our tax levy limit. So for South Country, for the 1920 school year, going by that 8-step calculation, we started at $60,217,689, and going through all of the factors, noticing that the levy growth factor, the 2% or lower, it was 2% because the consumer price index was slightly higher. Our tax levy, our maximum tax levy for next year is $62,240,685, which translates to an increase of 3.36%. So essentially, our maximum is 3.36%. Anything greater would require a supermajority. Anything low, that number or lower, is a simple majority, 50% plus 1. That's all I have. Questions?
So you had also provided for the board.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Ms.
Hi, Lloyd.
Nope, go right ahead.
Just clarification, because after a while, I lost track of the years here. What year are we at with the pilot? Because I know we have the bump up this year.
For which?
Caithness?
Yeah, Caithness. That's, to me, that's the pilot, because the other ones are.
I think it ends in 29, if I'm not mistaken.
Wasn't it 25 total years?
Yes, and I think it started in.
So 29.
Yeah, I thought we were getting, well, this is the point where This is the final level, if I remember.
At this point, for the rest of the schedule, it's the same number.
Exactly, that's what I thought, we finally reached that point. All right, that's I know. 'Cause, that's
Which I
certainly-
think is like 6.3 million or so, 6.33.
You good?
Yeah, on that one. And, yeah, for now, go ahead.
Okay.
Just on that quick, because you mentioned levy cap, and you know how I feel about how it affects the thing. Is it safe to say in simple math that the pilot, when, you know, how the pilot payment gets subtracted from the levy, right, from the formula, okay, so we can only raise taxes. So would you say that we lose the percentage allowable of that pilot payment?
Yes.
So that's, which is what I thought, so that's $266,000 that is a negative impact because of the pilot, not to say the pilot isn't a good thing, but.
Within that calculation, the answer is.
Because I don't ever remember
yes.
seeing it that high, and that's because the payment's high, because it went up,
This is
and
the
it's the
final
highest levy limit we've had some time. So, I guess, you know, I always bring it up, it's something people need to understand, is that the way the formula is, we lose $266,000 in what we can go to the public for.
There are two components to that as well. One, in that, yes, because there are additional pilots that are not on the tax roll, it does take away from the bottom line number.
Mhm.
But also, the mechanics of the actual pilot itself, it may or may not garner additional revenue if it is on the tax roll. That is a big to be determined. That's
Okay,
something
yeah.
that we don't know. But to
I got it,
answer
yeah,
your
yeah.
question, in a general sense, the answer is yes.
In a general sense, and that's because I think it's complicated when you say to people that there is actually a negative impact to the pilots to some extent.
Right.
Although our pilots, because we have one really big one, it kind of dwarfs it a little bit, but.
They do fluctuate. Some go off. Smaller ones on 1 year, and then we'll have one that's on for 4 or 5 years.
And then there's the ones that keep getting extended, so don't get me started on that. But that's all I got on it, thank you.
Yeah, we have to be grateful when at Port Jefferson or Northport.
Does anybody have any other questions? I have no more questions because they weren't actually.
So has the board had the opportunity to look at the document prepared? It essentially is a summarization of what Dr. Gertis just shared, along with the tab on the screen at this time.
Yes, I looked at it. For me, we talk about the tax levy limit versus the tax rate, or the tax percentage, what is it, allowable increase. Tax levy, tax rate. And then at the end of the explanation, it refers back to the levy limit again. So again, it's not for me and for the community distinguishing the difference between the two as clearly in this explanation as Dr. Gergis just did in this presentation.
Should put a clip of him on there.
Well, I think because less is more.
Okay,
It's very wordy,
okay.
and if we go back to the PowerPoint and the
number,
bullets,
The bullet. Okay.
that explains it better than the two very copious
The fast fact.
paragraphs.
The fast fact.
Yes.
What about the step-by-step? No?
On the second page of the letter?
TMI.
It's, I don't know.
Hang on. Hard to follow.
It was on that.
This?
No, you were,
The original calculation.
Yeah.
keep going.
I don't, why can't we just put this whole PowerPoint on the website?
It's already there.
Oh, good.
The entire, that one, you passed it.
This one.
That's one. The entire website, the entire initial one is on, this one will be on,
Okay.
because it's done in public. I thought the board was looking for
Oh, yeah.
something a little,
We were,
well, we can try to
We were,
make that a
but
little bit
this-
more clear and concise.
yeah. I think we just need to take a lot more words out of it and just highlight the points.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Right?
I think almost the bulleted points would make more sense.
It's a much easier read. And it makes it less confusing because there's a difference between tax levy, tax rate, bottom line. It's like, oh, that's what the difference is. But when you refer to the narrative that you gave us, It refers to, yeah, because it talks about tax levy and then it ends up talking about tax levy again.
Okay.
So, it doesn't distinguish between the two. Mr. Santos, did you have enough time?
No, I was just gonna say, especially this year, because it's unusual that the percentage is 3.36, which people are going to see that number and say, oh my gosh, we're passing the cap, and we're actually
And we're not.
not. The formula is, thanks be to Dr. Gurgis for being the one who has to figure out the formula, but because the economy has done better and the CPI is over 2% slightly, it does influence the formula. And that combined with the pilots, we end up with the 3.36. But we're still within the cap.
Okay,
I get it.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The next presentation is an update on expense and revenue.
We've got a growth factor less than 1. So that's the difference, the growth factor.
Okay, so as mentioned, this is our expense and revenue update. As the board knows, since our last presentation, we do have a state budget, which we were able to apply that information to this presentation. Just to summarize last week's staffing summary in terms of broad areas of staffing, we have a 3.6 increase in staffing overall. That's represented by 1 addition at administration, 1.1 in secondary, 4.5 in non-instructional, and less 3 in the elementary staff. So just to review our budget development, the current budget plan is truly program-driven, maintains our small class sizes, there's no change in fine and performing arts or scholastic athletics, continues our K-12 intervention programs, and also includes staffing for the new early childhood center, and pre-K transportation is included in this proposal. So some of our financial challenges, as the board knows, our contractual obligation increases are at $1.7 million. Transportation contract, the board just received an RFP and approved an award at the last meeting. That transportation increase is 11%, or $616,000. As Dr. Gurgis just mentioned, we have a tax levy limit of 3.36, or $2 million. We continue to struggle with unfunded and underfunded mandates. This year, we are receiving a decrease in state aid funding as from previous years. The executive proposal, as you recall, was a $418,000 decrease. Legislator did a nice job in terms of getting some money back, however, not the level that we've had in the past. So we have a reduction of about $40,000 in state aid revenue this school year. So taking a look at those revenues, allowable tax levy limit, different, and I'm not going to read every one of these, but you can see the difference is about $2 million, as Dr. Gurgis had indicated. State aid is a decrease of $40,000. Our pilots, a little bit of an increase of $379. Miscellaneous revenues. Now, the designated fund balance, reserve appropriation, and the debt service transfer are recommendations. Those are for the board to make a decision on. I put them there because at this meeting we like to show the board that we have no longer a gap. We have a plan in place that you can go to the public with. We are assuming the board would support $3.9 million in designated fund balance. It's just under what you appropriated last year. I know the board has been trying to reduce that number. We would continue to draw on the reserves, $400,000. We started that last year. The state looks favorably upon when you start spending money in the bank account that you don't need, and that's what we're trying to do. And then the debt service transfer, which we are in the third year of a 5-year plan. That's right. And that is something the board has indicated they are interested in doing that. Projected expenses. These are very simply all the codes that you've seen over the last month or so. with regard to what it is costing or what the projected plan would cost. Only a reduction in benefits and debt service. Okay, so now this slide brings both of those slides together. Shows the allowable tax levy increase, and it goes right down to for your revenues and your expenses on the bottom line. And what we've done here, as I mentioned earlier, was we assumed or recommend that the board accept the $3.9 million for designated fund balance, $400,000 for the appropriation from reserves, $600,000 for debt service, which balances out and eliminates the gap that we've been talking about and reducing slightly every time that we have met. So what's next? Board needs to determine if they want to stay within the tax cap. This budget allows you to do that. Determine if the board wishes to continue to recommend the debt service fund appropriation of $600,000. In the past, you have chosen to do that. Determine if you want to accept the recommended general fund appropriation of 20. So these last couple of lines specify where those reserve money, that $400,000 is coming from, $200 from workers' comp, $200 from the retirement contribution reserve. And then finally, determine the amount the board wishes to designate from fund balance, and the recommendation is 3.9 million. What's next? Just what I said, in a nice little checklist form.
Make the list checking it twice.
Your budget considerations before you. What we'd like to do, because we were working on efficiencies and reducing the gap as we were moving along, and then we actually got a little bit more money than we anticipated from the state with regard to the legislation. So we want to do what we did similar to last year. If you recall, last year, same thing, we got a little bit more money. I think it was the tune of $480,000. And what we did was we put that money into maintenance for South Haven in preparation for it, knowing that we would then take that money and move it into transportation for pre-K. So it was around that, and we wanted to have that money on hold so we could support that transportation piece. Similar to that, we'd like to take that extra piece. Some of the extra money was put into the fund balance appropriation, and the rest of the money will be put into district-wide repairs, which quite frankly, we have a lot of repairs that we can make here in the district. As Mr. Santo mentioned, it's just the parking lot as well as the lighting there. That could be considered for that as well. And then, after those reports are done the following year, we would take that $280,000 and put it towards transportation again, because as the board knows, we're going to have another hit based on the transportation contract that we just accepted. So, guidance from the board.
Okay. All right. Questions? from the board?
Next time we meet, February 7th,
April
17th,
Mhm.
will be
We'll adopt
towards
it.
adoption of the budget. So the administration needs any direction in terms of any changes at this point, so we can prepare that.
Yeah, and that's why we have tonight's workshop. Mr. Santo?
If it's not abundantly clear, my grave concern will be a lesser amount of funding for the preschool grants, because we haven't met the number that we had previously met. I know that, to understand that that's still to be determined. Maybe Dr. Gertis with his crystal ball could possibly predict, because I know there's been more talk about more money being put into the state system for pre-K, and that, how will that potentially impact the pool of money available and the percentage that we're going to end up with? Any thoughts
That's
on
some-
that by chance?
There's some crystal balls.
Well, I know he's got it. Well, I have faith in Dr. Gertis. Could we actually maybe look into that? Because there's been a lot of talk, and I don't know the minutia of the budget, quite frankly, been a little busy
When
this
do
week.
we get notified on the grant that they have made in the MOU?
Gonna be soon.
After once we file with the state, then once they reconcile our aid, which is after the end of the year, when we know how much we actually get.
So
But
not-
we usually have a ballpark based on previous
Right.
enrollment, and now that the enrollment is down, we have to anticipate.
Less,
So my
sure.
thing is, we'll now have a beautiful, fully staffed building, but we may not have the grant money to fill it with children. And I want to know that there's someplace in this budget, a stopgap to make that so. It's passed through, and we
So-
supplemented a little bit here and there,
So.
but I don't want a beautiful empty
But I
building
didn't
that's
hear the
fully
answer
staffed.
Dr. Gurgis
Yeah,
gave.
it's not
We
until the
won't
end of the
know until
school
the
year.
end of the school
Yeah.
year?
Yes. So yes, we supplement the pre-K program, and most of that supplement is the 3 teachers.
Yes.
And I think a piece of the administrator from the past. We plan to continue to supplement that amount. There's no doubt we'll have a little less from the grant. However, the RFP is not out yet, and I think, as I mentioned at the last meeting, we're looking to craft the RFP so we can allow space within the building to be used for the CBO, and are hopeful that we will get a reduced cost in that regard.
Okay.
So there's a lot of balls in the air, so to speak, with regard to.
Well, in case they all drop, do we have a plan B? That's my point.
Well, it's hard to, project how they may drop. We will be getting money. We do have additional funds right now from the state that we're reallocating to district repairs. That may be something we need to consider if all the balls do drop.
Yeah, well, that's
But I
why
don't
I'm
like
having
to
this discussion
speculate
for full
so
transparency.
badly until we get the RFP back from.
Well, how did we do last year with UPK enrollment? Were we low and then
We
received less
were
money?
low.
Did we-
I don't recall if we made a MOE or just made it. We were low, and as the board knows, enrollment's dropping. This year we did get a big hit in all levels, not just pre.
But it didn't affect the budget. It didn't negatively affect the budget last year. so-
No, it didn't.
Okay.
No, well, listen, we'd have to go back and get the supplement, because like
It's
Mr.
a significant
Mr.
drop.
Santos said,
Can we-
we supplement back.
Can we get that information
Sure.
for?
That's what I had requested
Okay.
back in early March.
So you want to see what we paid and what the grant supported last year,
Correct.
previous year to that?
Yes,
Sure, why not?
can we go back 3 years, please? Because that's when the numbers really
Sure, we'll do
started to
that.
fall off.
Yeah, this way we'll get a nice picture.
And that's why I was so concerned about what is our plan to increase enrollment, because now we are really just at a third of what we ought to have in our pre-K program. And that doesn't really bode well for the future of the district. We
Well, I
were
think-
I know
low.
other districts they're already on waiting lists.
Yeah.
I
So we
think there
really,
was-
we
That's
really need
unfortunate.
to help our students, and the transportation is a huge key, but if we can now transport them, but then we won't be able to pay the teachers, then we have a problem. So that's why we need to have
Well, to
that
that point-
secondary point.
To the point that's being made about the transportation and the advertisement that has been taking place about UPK, are we promoting the fact that we are providing transportation
No,
this year?
because your budget has not been adopted.
Okay,
So we really
so
need,
it's
We
still
do put
we
potential
can-
though.
we can do that if the board's direction to the administration this evening is move forward with this as an adopted budget. Then I believe we can do that because it's in there.
Uh-huh.
Okay, before it being in there, I think you'd be foolish to make promises to the
So
public
families-
because you didn't know what the state was coming in with.
Okay.
Remember, we had
All right, no, that's
120,000,
fair.
5,000.
No, I get that. So for families who are coming in and enrolling right now, they're being told, our plan is to provide busing, but we won't know until we adopt the budget? And then we won't
I
know
don't want to
until we
say
pass the
what
budget.
that is, but I will tell you this. Once the board does decide it's in, calls will be made
Okay,
to those folks that have.
okay.
Well,
And then we
that's
still
how-
have to pass the budget.
well,
Sure.
Yeah, then the budget still has to
Yes, as
pass.
well.
I just would say, besides the calls made to the people who register, because, there's one of those things where if you've been a parent in the district, you know when to come register, or if you have a friend who had a kid in pre, you know. A lot of people still don't know, and that's why the outreach is so important. And the one year that we had an extensive outreach program to the point in which we had some of our bilingual social workers going to some of the local churches, our numbers did increase, and that was also the year we had some transportation.
Our bilingual
So-
parent liaison is doing that now. Mr.
That's
Santa.
phenomenal, it makes me very happy to hear that, and I'm hoping that we'll really continue that push. Because it's often some of the disenfranchised people in our community who might very well make the best use of our
And
pre-K.
benefit from early education.
It's a win-win for all of us.
And quite honestly, I believe the numbers will improve or increase when you offer more full-day opportunities.
Of course,
Because you have a longer list of those requests.
absolutely.
And parents are having issues with timing, and when you can provide a full-day opportunity, you will get folks that are currently in private area.
And we have,
Well-
we have your commitment that the administration will facilitate that.
Oh, absolutely.
What I'm even going to say is, it's not even so much facilitating those who are in private. We have such a large percentage of students who just aren't in anything, because they can't physically get to the building. So,
And
well-
transportation will meet that need.
absolutely, as long as they know it's available.
Yeah, okay.
So
All
it's
right,
a
so
two,
that's
it's a
a big piece.
two-prong issue, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And then my next wish list is by, a dual language pre-K. I'll push for that next year.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate that.
I'll help you in any way I can.
All right. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so we'll be looking forward to the 3-year
Okay, so move forward as planned.
information. Move forward as planned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, that was the easiest we've done in 10 years. I don't know. Oh, all right. Not usually like this.
We're,
We are at guide to board meetings, correct?
well, I don't.
Any old-
Have nothing.
Somebody may want to. No cards yet? Okay. For those who are in the audience, we're at the portion of our meeting that allows for public commentary on the agenda items, which is the budget. And so anybody who's wishing to make a comment can do so by being given 3 minutes. Public commentary will be, total public commentary is limited to 30. No, we're not talking about personnel. Okay, if you, yeah, so if anybody would like to speak, please fill out a yellow card, present it to the district clerk, and we'll hear from you. No speakers? Okay. Going once? Going twice? All right. All right, I believe that brings us to closing remarks then. So, Mr. Santo, would you begin?
Well, actually, I'd like to thank administration and Dr. Gurgis. I have to say that was the most pleasant budget meeting I have attended in 10 years. And we are very fortunate that some of the long-range planning has really come to fruition and kind of leveling out what we can do while still using less of a fund balance. So this had often been one of those evenings where I would really dread, because I knew that the information in the news was not going to be good. So despite the fact that we did get less state aid, the long-range planning that's been done here has made it possible for us to continue with the programs that we have, and then also add, in my humble opinion, some things that are quite necessary. And I've always been a proponent of early literacy, and I do believe that providing busing to some of our students who cannot get to a pre-K program will definitely pay off in so many ways in the future for the education process in our district. And the fact that we'll have a beautiful center in order to educate all our students really, I don't have words for that because it makes my heart skip a beat, so I'm really looking forward to that. A few other things on my housekeeping list, my spring cleaning. I do want to remind the board that I did go to the conference, the NISBA conference, in reference to superintendent evaluations, and there is a great new program that's available through NISBA that makes it more efficient and easier for a school board. So I'm hoping that we'll put that on the agenda to discuss that program and possibly even invite Mr. Michael Horning, who was at the NISBA conference, and he is the executive vice president of a system called SuperVal, which is being put forth by NISBA, and it's really seemed to be a very easy to institute computerized way in which to tabulate the evaluation system we already have. And it takes some of the labor and the bias, and it makes it very efficient. And it's also BOCES aidable, so it's at a very reasonable cost, so
Could
I
you
found
forward
it
that
to be.
information?
Well, I sent you some information, perhaps you didn't see it. I'll maybe ask
No, I
if
know we
could.
discussed it, but I don't recall.
Yeah, I
saying
thought I
anything.
did a snapshot of some of the papers, because there's booklets and whatnot, but maybe I can give it to our district clerk, Ms. Flynn, to make some copies, because I only have a single copy of that. And speaking of workshops, I did mention at the last meeting, and some of you probably think it ended up in our update, and we received it in the mail, that there is the conference, NISBA conference, that's going to be held at Teachers College on May 2nd. And I've been very impressed through the years with things that come out of Teachers Conference. So I actually respectfully request to be able to attend that. And I don't know if any of the board members want to join me. But it's about eliminating some bias and serving some of the underserved populations in school districts. So I think that's something that's very relevant for us. And
You said that was in the update?
yeah, I had
I
mentioned.
just want to make
You know,
sure the
funny
clerk
thing
has the
is,
information.
I had mentioned it, and I guess it came in the mail that day, and then it ended up in the next update.
What's the date?
It's May 2nd, Thursday,
May
May 2nd. Remember, because Thursday's my mandatory day off, so I can attend, so it works for me. And I think it's a very
We have to
valuable
add that to
topic
the
for
April
us.
17th agenda.
Sure, and if any other trustees would like to attend, please let Christine know, so we can.
You ride the train with me.
I'm already attending the conference on May 1st, so I wouldn't be able to do the May 2nd. Anything
I can't do Wednesdays.
All right. Anything else?
I think that will be it for my updates at the moment, my spring cleaning list, so
Okay.
move on.
Okay. Okay. There's a presentation.
Just wanted to thank Dr. Gurgis and Dr. Gianna for a very pleasant budget presentation, and look forward to adopting it at the next meeting.
All right, and likewise, I'll echo the comments of Vice President Hicks, that certainly the board and the administration has come together to, I believe, meet the needs of the district. And it's nice to see that everything came together in the way that we have expressed our desires and what we wanted to see. We're all very excited about the UPK Center, so I do hope that our enrollment continues to improve, and that once we adopt the budget next week, those calls to those parents about transportation will help increase enrollment all the more. So if there's any other resources that are needed to have our parents liaisons reach out, I certainly hope the administration would be forthcoming in doing so.
We will.
Okay, great. All right, that concludes our meeting. One more thing?
I just thought about this. Do we have the schedule as of yet when the superintendent and the administration will be attending the board meetings to discuss the budget? Is that out? Or has that schedule been?
The roadshow.
Oh, the
The
roadshow.
roadshow.
The PTA meeting.
Yes, I do have that tentative from Ms. Vernon.
Okay.
Yes.
Because it wouldn't be a bad idea to let people know if they're watching
Yes.
or,
Yes, I will.
what those dates are.
We'll wrap that up tomorrow and put that.
Put that in the
Put that in the update and put it out.
well, not even so much for me. I meant
Yeah,
if we
yeah.
had it
Put it on the
to
website.
let people know, or at least put it on the
Okay, so for those of you
website.
out there,
Check the
PTA
website.
would, PTA would.
PTA does that. but we-
Well,
PTA will
will.
be
Put it on
letting you
their
know
page.
when the superintendent and
Just in
members of the Board of Education will be visiting the PTA meetings to discuss the details of the budget and share with you some of our thoughts and hear some of your concerns about the budget as well. So that will be happening. It will be listed on our website. And our next meeting will be April 17th 7:30 here in this room, so that we may formally adopt budget.
Budget hearing.
Okay? For the budget hearing, for formal adoption. Okay? All right, hearing no more issues, we have a motion to adjourn. Motion by Dr. Griffin, second by Vice President Hicks. All those in favor? We stand adjourned. Thank you very much for everyone who's attended and those who are listening.